I once carried a secret inside me, a love that was never spoken aloud for a boy everyone else seemed to worship as if he were untouchable. Marcus Harris was the golden son of Spokane, the boy who made teachers smile and classmates whisper with awe, the one who walked through the halls of Lewis and Clark High School as if the world belonged to him. I watched him from the shadows for years, building him into a dream, so radiant I almost believed it would burn forever. But destiny has a way of reshaping even the brightest lives. Marcus lost it all when the sound of screeching tires tore through a summer night and the crash left him broken. His legs paralyzed, his future shattered. When everyone else turned away, I brought him home. I stayed by his side through the bitterness, through the long, sterile hours in hospital corridors at Providence Sacred Heart, through the quiet nights when he refused to speak, and through the mornings when he clutched at rage instead of hope. I loved him silently and completely, sacrificing pieces of myself just to keep him alive, believing that maybe someday he would look at me and finally see me. Yet when the end came for me at 26, when my chest rose and fell for the last time, his eyes were not on me, but on the memory of Rachel King, the first girl he ever loved, the one whose absence carved a hollow in him deeper than any devotion I could offer. Even as I closed my eyes forever, he was still whispering her name. And then I opened them again. The air was sharp in my lungs, the taste of time both foreign and familiar, and I was no longer 26 but 58, standing at the edge of everything I thought I knew. This time, I did not look for Marcus. This time, my hand reached for Andrew Miller, the boy who had always walked beside me, even when I refused to see him, the friend who grew into a man, steady as the ground beneath my feet. I thought perhaps the universe had given me this chance not to repeat my mistakes, but to reclaim my dignity. But Marcus, reborn in this same twisted loop of fate, found me again. His eyes, still the color of summer storms, fixed on me with a desperation I had never seen before. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice-breaking gaze red-rimmed, as if he had spent years searching and had finally stumbled upon me. I wanted to answer with the truth, to tell him that I was walking away from the wreckage of us, that I was stepping into a life where his shadow could no longer consume me, but my lips only pressed together as I turned from him. On the day I turned 26, a truck ended everything I thought I was. When I opened my eyes again, I was 58, and somehow back in the classroom I once knew. The desks were the same, the chalk dust still clung to the air, and the sound of teenagers filled the space with careless energy. Whispers rippled through the room as the door swung open and a new student stepped in. Word had already spread that he was transferring from an elite private school where tuition alone cost as much as most families earned in a year. Girls leaned forward, excitement sparking in their voices. Then the door closed and silence fell like a curtain. I did not need to lift my head to know who it was. I felt the pull of sunlight on hair that once gleamed like threads of gold, felt the weight of presence that had once been my undoing. One glance at him had once been enough to drown me. The teacher smiled gently and told him to introduce himself, but Marcus did not speak. His gaze cut through the room, landed on me, and held there as if nothing else existed. My chest tightened. I pretended to be calm, to be indifferent, but when he walked directly toward me, every memory surged. He stopped in front of my desk, eyes full of questions, and asked, "Do you still remember me?" Gasps fluttered from the classmates around us, curiosity sparking in their voices, but Marcus only looked at me as if I were the only one alive. I lowered my lashes, hiding the storm within me, and when he repeated his question with quiet urgency, I finally lifted my head and let a smile curl at the corners of my lips. "Do we know each other?" I asked softly. The light in his eyes flickered out as if someone had blown out a candle. He hesitated, then took the empty seat behind me. My deskmate leaned close, whispering, "Claire, you really don't know Marcus Harris. He keeps staring at you." Of course I knew. I could feel the weight of his stare pressing into my back. But I forced myself to keep my eyes on the blackboard, to hear only the teacher's voice. I knew he was unsettled. After all, the girl I once was had loved him for years, had stood by him when he had nothing, when he had lost even his legs, refusing to abandon him. But now that same girl looked through him as if he were a stranger. My friend whispered again, suggesting maybe he liked me. Maybe it was love at first sight. I laughed under my breath, bitter and cold. That was impossible. When someone who has been worshipped falls from the pedestal, people stop kneeling. He was not looking at me with love, but with disbelief that I could ignore him. And now in this life, he had regained everything: his legs, his wealth, his family's fortune. All the things he valued more than me. It was only a matter of time before his gaze slid away to brighter prizes. When class ended, girls surrounded him like bees drawn to honey. They asked for his number, for his WeChat, giggling with excitement. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. One girl gasped when she saw the wallpaper, her voice ringing out. "She's so pretty. Is that your girlfriend?" I turned instinctively. Marcus's jaw tightened as he lowered the phone quickly, frustration shadowing his features. "No," he muttered. But I had seen enough. The girl in the photo was Rachel King, the daughter of a wealthy family from Brown's Addition, the girl who had always been his moon. He had loved her since they were young, clung to her memory even through the darkest nights. They had once fought the world to be together, only to be torn apart when his family fell from fortune and hers refused to accept him. And so even as he stood there in that crowded classroom surrounded by new faces and the endless possibility of youth, Marcus Harris still belonged to Rachel King. Marcus had been drinking that night, and when he staggered into his car and pressed the gas, fate was waiting at the next intersection. The crash was merciless. When I found him in the hospital, his body was broken, his legs mangled and bleeding, his voice no longer strong enough to fill a room. I remember standing frozen in that sterile white space, the smell of blood and disinfectant filling my lungs, and for a moment I could not breathe. Seeing him like that was like drowning in mud, every breath heavier than the last, but I stayed. I stayed because he had no one else, and because the girl I had been still loved him with a desperation that was destroying me. I brought him home when there was nowhere else for him to go. I fed him, I cleaned his wounds, I turned his sheets, I wiped away his anger when it erupted into curses and broken dishes. In the beginning, he lashed out at everything, furious at the world, furious at me for being the one left to witness his fall. But I endured. I endured every insult, every slammed door, every cold shoulder, telling myself that if I was patient enough, maybe he would see me. Times softened him, or maybe it was my persistence. The rage ebbed into silence, and silence became the weight he carried day after day. I would find him sitting by the window for hours, his eyes distant, his lips pressed shut. his wheelchair like a cage he could not escape. I feared sleep because if I drifted too deeply, I might miss the sound of him breaking again, might miss the chance to hold him together. So I lived half awake, every sound pulling me to his side. 6 months passed like that, and one afternoon when I asked him what he wanted to eat, he stared out the window for a long time before saying softly, "I cannot give you anything." The words sliced through me. I sat down beside him, my hand reaching to embrace him. He did not pull away. I whispered into the hollow space between us, "I don't need you to give me anything. Just stay with me." My head rested on his shoulder, and in that moment, I felt a single drop of warmth slide onto my skin, a tear that was not mine. I believed then foolishly that I had finally reached him, that maybe he had felt the truth of my love. But illusions crumble when Rachel King appears. She was the girl he had once loved, with all his being the white dress, the gentle smile, the voice that always sounded like spring. When she walked into that classroom again, calling his name, my heart clenched with a pain so sharp I thought it would split me in half. Marcus frowned, telling her to wait until after class, but I had already seen the light in his eyes. Later, as I packed my books, he stopped me. His gaze was searching, restless. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "She looks so much like you." I forced myself to meet his eyes, confusion painted across my face. "I don't know you," I answered. He froze as if the ground had vanished beneath him. Perhaps he never imagined a day would come when I no longer loved him. But that day had arrived, and in my heart the door was closing. The night of my 26th birthday, the truck struck me down in the rain, as my body crumpled and the world fell away. My last thought was not fear of death, but fear of what would happen to Marcus without me. My spirit drifted above the storm, and I rushed home desperate for one last glimpse. What I saw hollowed me out. Marcus was not alone. Rachel was there, sitting across from him, her smile as serene as ever. They were reminiscing their laughter like a melody I had never been part of. He looked at her with the tenderness he had never shown me, and in that gaze, I was erased. When she finally spoke of me, her words cut deeper than any blade. She suggested that perhaps my devotion was not pure, that perhaps I had taken him in because I knew he was the heir to his family's fortune. She let the implication hang in the air, like poison, and Marcus sat in silence. I shook my head, screaming in the void, begging him to see the truth. Everything I had done was because I loved him, because I believed he needed me. At last he murmured, "I know." My soul surged forward, reaching for him, desperate for him to feel me there. But in the very next breath, Rachel leaned forward and kissed him. He did not resist. The sound of my own heart breaking was louder than the storm outside. I clutched my chest, screaming soundlessly as rain lashed the windows. The agony split my mind until there was nothing left but one clear thought. "Marcus Harris, I will never love you again." My heart turned to ash. When I walked out of the school gate in another strand of time, Rachel was waiting there again, her eyes bright with determination. She saw Marcus behind me and hurried to him, pleading, "Marcus, please stop being angry with your family." Their voices carried over the damp air, a melody of old intimacy. I lowered my head and quickened my pace, wanting only to leave it all behind, but I collided with someone at the corner. "Claire Lopez, isn't it?" A voice rang out, laced with provocation. I lifted my eyes and recognized the face instantly. Another figure from the life I thought I had buried. The girl's name was nothing I cared to remember at first, just another face in the crowd, but the hostility in her eyes burned itself into my memory. Behind her stood two boys taller and broader than most in our grade, their stance heavy with menace. In an instant, it returned to me. In the life I once lived, I had seen her smoking in the restroom. Not long after, a male teacher had caught her and punishment followed. She had believed it was I who had betrayed her, and from that day the torment began. For months, she and her crew hunted me like wolves, and one afternoon, they finally left me bleeding and bruised in a corner of the schoolyard. That was the day Marcus Harris appeared like a figure carved out of light, his kick sending the bullies sprawling, his voice colder than anything I had ever heard. "Show up again, and I will destroy you," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut bone. My heart shattered open in awe, and from that moment, my quiet affection for him became an unshakable devotion. Years later, when I reminded Marcus of that day, when he was a man bound to a chair, he frowned and after a moment said simply, "They were unlucky." I was in a bad mood. My silence that followed was louder than words. Something I had cherished as sacred in my girlhood had been nothing but a whim to him, an action born of boredom rather than care. Now, standing before the same girl again, I lifted my head to meet her glare. She accused me of being the snitch, her hand twisting into my collar, her voice sharp. I did not flinch. In the life before, I would have bowed, terrified of conflict, but this time I had already died once. There was nothing left to fear. I ripped her grip away and stared into her eyes. "Leave," I said, each syllable steady. She raised her hand and struck me across the face. The slap rang out like a gunshot, drawing every pair of eyes in the courtyard. Without hesitation, I lifted my own hand and returned the blow harder, sharper, leaving her stunned into silence. Her boys surged forward, but before they could reach me, a body flew into them, fists hammering with fury. Marcus Harris, again not the elegant golden boy, but a creature possessed raining down blows until blood streaked their faces. Rachel King's voice cut through the chaos, shrill and pleading. "Marcus, stop!" But he did not stop until he finally collapsed to his feet, panting, trembling eyes, finding me through the ring of horrified classmates. He staggered forward, his smile faint, his body beaten, but his words trembling with promise. "I will not let anyone hurt you." I stepped back, my chest aching with confusion. His lashes quivered as he whispered, "Are you afraid of me?" His hand caught mine, his eyes desperate. "You once said all you needed was me by your side. Do you still remember?" The coldness in me surged forward. I yanked my hand away and looked into him as if he were a stranger. "You're insane." The words cut him deeper than any fist. And yet by the next day, the whispers spread like wildfire. The transfer student, the golden boy of a private academy, had lost control for a girl named Claire Lopez. I became the center of attention overnight. Marcus changed then. He no longer repeated his question about whether I remembered him. Instead, he began to pursue me with an intensity that unsettled me. The boy who once had everything done for him now brought me breakfast each morning, filled my bottle with hot water, took every chore he could from my hands, even followed me home to make sure no harm could reach me. My desk mate, giddy with excitement, nudged me and said, "Claire, how can you not feel anything? He is doing all of this for you." I smiled faintly. So, what her shock was almost comical. She could not know that in another life, I had already loved him for 8 long years, that I had written hundreds of letters. I never starved myself into slimness, studied with tireless determination, all to stand one step closer to him. None of it had mattered. In the end, he had lost his father to suicide, his mother to madness, Rachel to disapproval, and his legs to steel. And even then, when I stood by him, he never truly saw me. All I had wanted once was to tell him I loved him, but those words had died with me, buried beneath years of silence. Now, standing in a new life, I no longer wanted to speak them. My heart had grown quiet. After class, Marcus shadowed me again. In the past, I would have told him not to follow, but this time I said nothing. At the school gate, I waited my patience calm until I saw him. Andrew Miller, the boy who had been the steady thread in my life, came running with a smile. "Sorry I'm late," he laughed. "What happened this time?" "Trouble again." His voice was warm teasing, and I felt Marcus's presence burning from a distance. I stepped forward and linked my arm through Andrew's. "No, nothing like that. I just thought since we're childhood friends, and it's been so long, we should grab a meal." Andrew chuckled, his hand ruffling my hair. "It's good you still think of me." My smile answered his light as the evening air, and together we turned to leave. But Marcus was there, blocking the path, his eyes bloodshot, his face twisted with anguish. He looked at Andrew with a glare, before his gaze turned back to me, trembling. "Claire," he said, his voice shaking like a wounded animal, "Claire." My heart quivered for a beat, but my reply was colder than winter. "What's going on?" "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, his voice raw, the words trembling, as though they cost him too much to speak. I clutched Andrew Miller's arm tighter, and my answer cut like glass. "Does it have anything to do with you?" he asked again, eyes glistening. "Where are you going?" I did not look back. I pulled Andrew past him, the air between us sharp as a blade. "Who was that?" Andrew asked. I turned my voice clear and loud enough for Marcus to hear I don't know him. His shoulders shook as if the sound itself had broken him, and his head bowed with a heaviness I had never seen before. He did not follow. Andrew and I ended up at a small noodle shop we used to haunt as children, the kind of place that carried the weight of memories in every chipped bowl and steam cloud. I spoke non-stop along the walk, forcing brightness into my tone to push away the darkness of the moment we had left behind. But as soon as we sat down, Andrew's gaze locked on me, sharp and knowing. "That boy," he said slowly. "You know him, don't you?" I froze. "He's just a transfer student in my class," I murmured. Andrew's mouth curved into a half-smile that never touched his eyes. "Does he like you?" My denial was swift. "No." His voice pressed harder. "Are you sure?" His eyes carried a wound, a fear that he was losing something precious. The truth was, I could still feel Marcus's eyes, bloodshot and desperate, seared into my mind. There had been a time when those eyes had been filled with the same helpless longing, when he sat in that chair broken and I stayed at his side. Back then, I told no one about bringing him home, not even my mother, who had raised me alone after my grandmother passed. But secrets wrought with time, and eventually she discovered the truth. She called me in fury and disappointment, her voice sharp with love and fear. "Claire, how could you do this without telling me? You are a young woman. How can you take care of a crippled man by yourself?" I told her lies to ease her pain, saying his parents had left money and I was only helping out for a while. But she refused to hear it. It is not proper. You are not his wife. Pack your things and come home immediately. Her words left me no choice. I pretended to agree, planning to find some excuse later, but in the meantime, I began to gather my belongings. Marcus noticed, though he said nothing, only watched with quiet eyes. The days before I left, he was unusually gentle, as though the rage had drained out of him, leaving only silence. On the morning I departed, I lied again, telling him I was being sent on a business trip. He only nodded. But just as I reached the door, his voice came low and fragile. "You will come back, won't you?" The sound of it broke me. I turned to look at him where he sat by the window, skin pale, body so thin I feared a breeze might shatter him. "Yes," I said, nodding hard, promising what I was not sure I could keep. At home, I tried to reason with my mother. I confessed the years I had spent loving him from afar, how he had been everything to me. She listened in silence until I promised her that once he had grown strong enough to stand on his own with prosthetics, once he no longer needed me, I would leave. She finally nodded. I rushed back, boarding the earliest bus, rain beginning to fall as dawn brushed the horizon. I hurried through the wet streets of Spokane, my coat pulled tight, imagining Marcus asleep in the dark apartment. But when I opened the door and turned on the light, my breath caught. He was still in the chair by the window, in the exact place I had left him. Head tilted, eyes closed as if frozen in time. If not for the rise and fall of his chest, I might have believed he had sat there for days waiting for me. "Marcus," I whispered. His eyes fluttered open, foggy at first, then clearing when he saw me. "Claire," he said, voice breaking, and in an instant, tears gathered his eyes red, as though he were a lost child finally found. "You came back." Pain stabbed my chest. I dropped my coat and rushed to him, rain still clinging to my hair. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I came back late." His arms closed around me suddenly tight, almost desperate. The embrace was not warm, his body still cold, but his breath was fire against my skin. My thoughts scattered, and when his lips found mine cold and trembling, I was too shocked to resist. That night in the rain, he kissed me. I thought perhaps it meant something. Perhaps in his shattered heart, there was finally space for me. But later, when I saw him kiss Rachel King with the same lips, the same eyes, I realized I had only been deceiving myself. What had that kiss meant? What had he felt when he pressed his mouth against mine, only to give the same to her, so soon after I had no answer, only the bitter truth? From beginning to end, it was always Rachel. My place in his heart had never existed. When Andrew pressed me with questions, I finally admitted that Marcus Harris had been following me. "You really don't like him anymore?" Andrew asked. "Not even a little." My answer was deliberate, carved out of steel. "I don't like him. Not at all." Andrew nodded, though something flickered in his eyes. After dinner, he walked me back to the apartment complex where I lived with my uncle and aunt while finishing school in Spokane. The moment I stepped through the door, my aunt's voice struck like a whip. "Senior year already, and what kind of decent girl comes home this late?" My uncle tried to hush her, but she snapped louder. "She's out there with that Jiang boy. Everyone can see it. Don't tell me you don't notice." My cousin sat nearby, pretending not to hear, but her eyes glinted with quiet malice. In the other life, she had run with the pack that tormented me, whispering ideas for their cruelty, and nothing had changed. I swallowed my anger and went straight to my room. A voice message from my mother waited on my phone. "Claire, are you under too much pressure lately?" My chest tightened. My aunt must have complained. I typed back quickly, "No, Mom. Everything's fine." Her reply came fast. "Good. Remember, whatever happens, you must tell me. I'm always here for you." I stared at the glowing screen until the words blurred, tears rising. If only I had listened to her before. If only I had left Marcus, once he could stand on his own, I might never have reached that 26th birthday. Never have stormed out in rage and been struck down in the rain. The fight that night had been over a letter, one I had written years earlier when I was 18, full of all the words I never dared say. He had found it. So the feeling has expired. Marcus had asked his gaunt face, half-shadowed his tone bitter. I hesitated, and in my silence he smirked coldly. "I'm nothing but a cripple. You should go and find happiness while you still can. Don't waste it on me." My protest came too late. "You misunderstand," I whispered, but he cut me off, laughter sharp as glass. "I misunderstood that you brought me home because you loved me. But it was pity, wasn't it?" Just pity. The word carved me open. After everything, after every night, I stayed awake so he would not slip into despair. After every sacrifice, what he saw was pity. I fled into the storm with tears burning my eyes. The rain drenched me until I could not feel where my body ended and the night began. I wandered through the streets until I passed a bakery window. Its glass fogged with the warmth of ovens. A cake sat inside, bright and cheerful, decorated with cartoon colors. And suddenly, I remembered. It was my birthday. Andrew had texted that morning to invite me to celebrate, but I had ignored him. My phone rang again. My mother's voice was soft through the static. "Happy birthday, Claire. My little girl is 26 now. Did you order a cake?" I stared at the cheerful sponge behind the glass. "Yes, Mom." I lied, forcing a smile into my tone. "A big one with Doraemon on it." She laughed, relieved. "That's good. Are your friends with you?" My throat burned. "Yes, they gave me lots of gifts." Silence stretched, then her voice gentled. "You're crying, aren't you?" I bit down hard. "Only from happiness, Mom." "We're about to cut the cake. I have to go." I hung up quickly before the sobs broke free. The clerk approached, asking if I wanted to buy a cake. I shook my head and ran out into the rain. My chest ached with every step, but another thought seized me. Marcus was alone. What if he hurt himself while I was gone? The fear drove me faster past the red glow of traffic lights. I didn't stop. Headlights blazed, brakes screamed, and then the world ripped apart. My body lifted, thrown like paper, and the last thing I carried with me as my soul staggered home was the sight of Marcus kissing another girl. I woke from the memory with pain curling inside me, as if my organs were being wrung out one by one. My phone still glowed the last message from my mother frozen on the screen. "I will always support you." Tears blurred the words again. Until my final breath in that life, I had never understood the depth of her love. I had given everything to a boy who could not return even a fraction, drowning in a one-sided devotion until I was empty. And in the end, I had nothing. If I was given another chance to live, I promised myself I would never repeat those mistakes. The next morning, Marcus Harris did not show up to school. Days passed, still no sign of him. My classmate leaned close and whispered, "Claire, do you know what happened to Marcus?" My reply was cool, almost detached. I don't. She blinked in disbelief. You're not worried at all. I looked straight ahead. It has nothing to do with me. My words silenced her completely. That same evening, my cousin Andrew's classmate, the one who had always disliked me, stumbled home with bruises all over his face. My aunt screamed, demanding to know who had dared to hurt her son. He muttered something about falling. She refused to believe it and dragged him toward the police station the next day. When I reached school that morning, Marcus still had not appeared. By the second period, the teacher called me out. "Claire, the police want to see you." Shock rippled through me. What did his fight have to do with me? But living under someone else's roof, I had little choice. I asked for leave and went. The moment I stepped into the station, I heard my aunt's shrill voice echoing down the hall. My poor boy got beaten bloody because of her. She acts so innocent, but look what happens around her. My stomach twisted. I raised my eyes and froze. Sitting on the long bench were two familiar figures, Marcus Harris and the girl who had once tormented me. In an instant, I understood. They had schemed something against me, and Marcus must have overheard, leading to a brawl. My aunt's accusations cut through the air. Because of her, my son ended up like this. I answered flatly, "It has nothing to do with me." Rage distorted her face. "What did you say?" She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "You think you're so special. You're nothing. You're a bastard child, nothing but shame." The slap landed hard across my cheek, the sting blazing. The room froze. Then Marcus surged forward, fury radiating from every line of him. "Touch her again and see what happens." His voice thundered, and for once my aunt faltered, though her tongue still spat venom. Just then, other parents arrived. A well-dressed woman stepped forward, introducing herself as Marcus's father's secretary. "His parents are busy. I've come in their place." She pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Here's 50,000. Take it. More than enough." My aunt's greed lit in her eyes, and the fight drained out of her. It was always the same bowing to wealth, trampling the poor. Across the room, the father of the girl who had bullied me slapped his daughter so hard she staggered. The curses that followed were so foul, the officers had to intervene. For the first time, I saw why violence was her only language. I slipped away, exhausted, but Marcus caught up quickly. His hand closed around mine. I wrenched free, my voice sharp with disgust. "Could you keep your distance from me?" His eyes were raw. "I'm sorry. I found out they were planning to hurt you. I couldn't ignore it. My anger flared hotter. Why must everything be solved with fists? Do you think just because you can walk again, the answer is to fight?" He stopped short, his eyes suddenly alight. "What did you just say? That I can walk again?" His breath came fast, his gaze burning into me. "Claire, don't tell me you've been reborn too, just like me." Step by step, he closed in, forcing me backward until the wall pressed against my spine. His breath was hot on my face, his eyes wide with a terrifying hope. "You came back with me, didn't you? Tell me I'm right." In that moment, Marcus looked nothing like the broken figure I remembered from my past life. His face was still untouched by hardship, smooth and pale, his eyes burning with youth and the vitality of a boy who had not yet been crushed by time. For a heartbeat, I saw the reflection of my own teenage self in his gaze, and panic flared. I shoved him away hard. "Are you insane?" I snapped. He froze like a child caught doing something wrong, fumbling in his pocket until he pulled out a bundle of letters and pressed them into my hand. "Claire, I know you're angry. I'm sorry. This time, let me be the one to write love letters for you." Each envelope was neatly folded, the words, "To Claire Lopez," written in careful script. For a second, the world blurred, and I saw myself years ago pouring my heart into letter after letter. I never dared send each one marked to Marcus Harris. Back then, it had been my wildest dream to place those words in his hands. Now, with that dream suddenly alive before me, all I could do was laugh bitterly. Love that arrives too late isn't worth a cent. I flung the letters into the air paper, scattering like pale leaves against the sky. My eyes were cold as I said, "I don't understand what you're talking about. Don't ever do something so meaningless again. It's disgusting." The light in his eyes vanished instantly. I turned on my heel and walked away. He did not follow. At home that night, my aunt surprisingly said nothing sharp or cruel. The money Marcus's guardian had paid her had clearly bought her silence. I had no desire to stay any longer, so I told my mother I wanted to focus on school and moved into the dorms. For the first time, I had space of my own, no taunts, no constant fights. I poured everything into studying. On every mock exam, my scores soared higher. In my previous life, I had studied only to stay close to Marcus, and I had achieved nothing special. Now that I had let go of him, success came easily, almost mockingly so. Andrew often visited the dorm, bringing snacks and little gifts, his quiet encouragement warming me more than he realized. I had always known he cared for me. In my past life, I ignored it blind and consumed by Marcus. This time, I promised myself I would learn to treasure those who truly loved me. Each time Andrew arrived, I welcomed him with genuine warmth. Marcus saw it all. Lately, he had kept his distance, moving his desk to the back row, never speaking to me. I decided it was better that way. My classmate whispered one day, "Marcus must be so hurt. Aren't you worried about him?" I smiled faintly. His pain was nothing more than pride wounded by rejection. Distance was safer. Graduation would come and we would part ways forever. Or so I thought. At the school sports festival, the campus was alive with energy. Parents, students, even visitors from other schools filled the grounds. The noise pressed on me, so I slipped back into the quiet classroom to study. My pen had barely touched the page when a shadow fell across my desk. "Claire Lopez." I looked up. Rachel King. My hand stilled over the paper. "What do you want?" I asked coolly. With a glance at the other two students in the room, she lowered her voice. "Could we talk outside?" "Say it here," I replied. For a moment, surprise flickered in her expression, but she recovered quickly, her smile gentle. "Marcus has had some conflicts with his family lately. His mood is unstable, his actions reckless. Please don't take anything he says or does too seriously." Her voice was warm, her words carefully chosen. To someone who did not know her, she might have seemed considerate, even kind. But I knew her too well. Beneath the sweetness was warning. Every act Marcus had made toward me, she was telling me was not real. I almost laughed. "Did you ask him whether it was real?" The question caught her off guard, her composure cracking. I turned to the student behind me. "What event is Marcus in today?" The answer came easily. "The short distance sprint, I think." I rose from my seat deliberately. Rachel stepped in front of me, eyes wide. You're going to watch him. I brushed past her, my voice flat. Guess? Her face tightened as I left the room. I had no intention of lingering in her carefully crafted web. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of games, tired of warnings dressed as kindness. I only wanted to live my life on my own terms, far from the chains of Marcus Harris and Rachel King. I never expected Rachel King to keep following me, but at the stairwell, she suddenly yanked my arm. "Stay away from him," she hissed. My lips curved faintly. So the heiress finally dropped the mask. "You should understand one thing," I said evenly. "From the beginning, it was Marcus who came to me." Her eyes widened, disbelief twisting into anger. "Impossible! He loves me! It must be you! You bewitched him! You brainwashed him!" I laughed softly. "Aren't you two so close? Why don't you ask him yourself?" I turned to leave, but she blocked me again. "You're not allowed to go watch him." My brows drew tight at her grasp. Before I could shake her off, I glimpsed a familiar figure approaching. She saw him too. At once, she dropped my arm and ran to him, her smile bright as sunlight clutching his sleeve as if to claim him. "Marcus, you're back. Are you tired? How are you feeling?" He had been avoiding me for weeks, and now when our eyes met, he looked down and away. "Not yet," he muttered to her. As he passed me, she pressed close to his side. "Tonight, let's go home together. We haven't had dinner in so long." "Fine," he said quietly. Her triumph was obvious. The afternoon crowd roared at the track meet, but in the next instant, a sharp crack split the noise. Someone had swung a fist straight into Andrew Miller's face. Shock rippled through the students. The attacker was Marcus Harris. Rage flared in me. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, pulling Andrew behind me, shielding him. Marcus's eyes were red, his voice shaking. "Claire, why won't you give me more time? I'll love you more than he ever could. I'll do better than him. Even if you don't remember me, it doesn't matter. I'll create new memories for us. You'll fall in love with me again. You will." His certainty cut deeper than any insult. Until now, I had stayed silent, but something inside me snapped. I turned to Andrew. "Wait here for me." Then I dragged Marcus aside. He thought I had relented, hope blazing in his eyes. "Claire, you came with me." I looked him straight in the face. "Stop doing these pointless things. I will never love you again." He only heard part of it, twisting my words. "You mean, you did love me before, didn't you?" My answer was calm. "Yes, in my last life." His face went slack, then blazed with a desperate light. "So it's true. You came back too." I neither confirmed nor denied, but his hands clamped on my shoulders. Why did you leave me alone? Didn't you say you liked me? Did you forget everything we shared?" I shook him off, steady as stone. "Maybe you don't know. The night I died, my soul returned home. I saw Rachel slander me with lies. And you didn't defend me. You accepted her kiss." His face drained of color. "From that moment, Marcus, I stopped loving you. I hated you." He stammered, pale as chalk. "No, it's not like that. She came to me. I didn't believe her words, not a single one. I just didn't want to argue. My laugh was sharp. And the kiss? Was that too much effort to refuse as well?" His mouth worked soundlessly, tears forming. "Claire, please believe me. From start to finish, you're the only one I've ever loved." I almost pitied him then, but bitterness was stronger, loved me. In our last life, you had nothing. I was the only one keeping you afloat, and I never used love to bind you. But you expected me to stay chained forever, to sacrifice everything while you never gave me your heart. And now, reborn, you are the same. You impose your pursuit on me, convinced I'll surrender again. But Marcus Harris, the only person you have ever truly loved is yourself. The crash of waves echoed like a warning salt and wind lashing against the shore as Marcus Harris stood there pale as a ghost. He looked ready to speak again, but Andrew Miller stepped forward, his presence cutting the moment clean in two. "Haven't you said enough?" he asked flatly, the weight of jealousy obvious though his tone stayed controlled. I smiled faintly. "It's finished." Then Andrew's fist swung fast and hard, catching Marcus across the face. Marcus stumbled back, clutching his cheek. Andrew's voice was cold. "Don't let me see you again." I added my own words, firm and merciless. "Did you hear him? My boyfriend doesn't want to see you ever again." Marcus's eyes searched mine full of agony, as if every ounce of life drained out of him. After a few seconds of silence, he bowed his head and walked away without another word. The party dissolved into awkward goodbyes, the laughter gone. Later, Andrew asked quietly, "What did you say to him?" I knew he was still unsettled, still carrying the sting of jealousy. I told him I have a boyfriend. I told him to stop disturbing my life. At that, Andrew's lips curved into a smile. "Good. That's all I need to hear." From that day, Marcus disappeared completely, as though he had fallen off the face of the earth. I never saw him again. Only sometimes in the restless drift of half-dreams did fragments of the past creep back his voice, his letters the way he once looked at me. Those memories whispered what I already knew: he had never loved me as much as he imagined he did. In my second year of college, a letter arrived in a handwriting I recognized instantly. On the envelope were the words, "To Claire Lopez." I didn't open it. I tossed it straight into the trash. By the time graduation came, I thought he was only a ghost in my memory. But under the blazing June sun, Rachel King appeared at the ceremony. Dressed in somber dark colors, she walked straight to me. Her first words were cold. "I really hate you." My brows lifted, but then she added, "Marcus Harris is dead." The world stopped for a breath. She told me everything in a shaking voice. After I left him, he had spiraled into depression. He spent hours each day staring blankly out the window, refusing to speak, drifting into silence. Despite his wealthy family, he sank into darker worlds: alcohol gambling, dangerous racing drugs. He became someone she could hardly recognize. One night, he drove drunk up a mountain road and never came down. The car flew off the cliff, shattered on the rocks below. In another lifetime, that accident had stolen only his legs. In this one, it stole his life. Rachel's eyes glistened with tears as she recounted it all. But my face never changed, because I knew this was the path he had chosen. He had been reborn with a chance to rewrite everything, a chance to heal, to love, to rebuild. But he clung to the past, forcing himself into corners, until there was nowhere left to go but down. His fate was not mine to mourn. He was not worth my pity. After Rachel left, my phone rang. My mother's voice was warm. "Claire, you've graduated now. What's your plan?" I laughed softly. "Probably work first." She chuckled. "And Andrew Miller." Last week, he asked me if we should plan an engagement early. I stepped out of the auditorium into the summer light. Mom, I'm still young. There's no need to rush. I'm not in a hurry, she teased, but someone else is afraid another man will steal you away. When I lifted my eyes, I saw Andrew waiting outside, a bouquet in his arms, standing under the fluttering leaves. The sunlight poured gold across the campus, the wind stirring the trees, and for the first time I smiled without bitterness. The impatient one is already here, I said in telephone. Let me ask his opinion first. Hanging up, I walked toward him, laughing, my heart lighter than it had been in years. This time, I knew how to cherish what mattered. The people who loved me were still here, still by my side. I would forget the past, and I could only hope that in some other life, Marcus Harris would forget it too. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.